So good morning to everyone that has joined. I want to welcome you to today's webinar, Accelerating First Contact Resolution with Analytics, presented by industry experts from the Call Center School and VPI. My name is Lauren Hughes, and I'll be your host today. To avoid any interruptions, all attendees have been placed in a listen-only mode. So if you have any questions during the webcast, please type them into the question box on your screen. We'll try to get to answer as many of your questions as possible at the end of the webinar within the allotted hour. We will be requesting your feedback on a poll question during the webinar, and thank you in advance for your participation on that. First contact resolution is quickly becoming a primary measure of contact center effectiveness and excellent predictor of customer satisfaction and loyalty. Improved first contact resolution rates also lead to reduced operating costs, increased opportunities to sell, and improved employee productivity. However, many of today's contact centers still struggle to find the effective way to track and improve this elusive metric. So the good news is that new, affordable analytics tools are making the quest for FCR much easier. Today I'm pleased to introduce Penny Reynolds, Senior Partner at the Call Center School. Penny has spent over 20 years in the call center and telecommunications industry. She heads up curriculum development for the Call Center School and teaches courses on a wide variety of topics, including first contact resolution, quality assurance, workforce management, application of call center technologies, call center operations, and people management. Penny served on the inaugural editorial board of Customer Support Management magazine and is among the first in the industry to receive CIAC Call Center Management Consultant certification. For her contributions to the industry, Penny was awarded Call Center magazine's prestigious Call Center Pioneer Award in 1996. She is an honors graduate of Vanderbilt University. Today, Penny Reynolds will discuss the value and impact of first contact resolution, as well as measurement challenges and best practices. I'm also pleased to introduce Patrick Boats from VPI. Patrick Boats serves as the Vice President of Workforce Optimization for VPI, the leading provider of contact center quality monitoring, performance analytics, and workforce optimization solutions for over 1,300 customers, including 1800flowers.com, AAA, AT&T, Banner Health, CNN, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, IBM, and also Delta Airlines. In a recent comprehensive research study conducted by Ventana Research, VPI ranked #1 in customer assurance for outstanding service and solutions and was awarded the prestigious 2010 Hot Vendor Award. Leveraging more than a decade of field experience as a contact center practitioner, Patrick works closely with customers to capture, analyze, and improve their mission-critical customer interactions. He received his bachelor's in engineering from Arizona State University, his MBA from Pepperdine University in California, and currently resides with his wife near Boston. Patrick will introduce to you new analytic solutions that are transforming the way organizations measure and solve first contact resolution. So Penny, if you'd like to get started today.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Thanks for the introduction. And we're happy to be here with you today on this lovely fall afternoon after, a week of kind of storms, I guess, going through the middle of the country. It's one of those, at least here in Tennessee, it's one of those beautiful blue sky days with the color and the trees, and gorgeous time to, well, not necessarily be in doing a web seminar, but maybe later today I'll get out and enjoy that. Well, I want to thank you for the invitation to join for this topic today. It's clearly one that's on everyone's mind, given the great big numbers that we have of attendees in this class today. Anytime you mention first call resolution, it piques interest, and there's always a big question of, how can we do this better? So, what we have found as we think about first call resolution and the big family of call center measures, one of the challenges, and this is true, and I see in the attendee list today that we've just got all kinds of call centers represented, hospitality and cellular and utility and financial and all kinds of call centers. But I think with a common problem, how do we most effectively measure how well we're doing and then get better at it? And it's been our experience that across all these different industries, across all different sizes of call centers, people are kind of overwhelmed with numbers. And one of the things that we always say, two real truisms related to the performance management challenges in call centers today is, one is just because you can measure it doesn't mean you should. And we see lots of call centers measuring everything under the sun just because they can, just because they have some technology and it has the capability of spitting out that report. They spit it out. And it's really not all that useful of information in terms of the day-to-day management or strategic planning and actually using the information. And so many call centers, I think, measure way too many things. On the other hand, just because you should measure something doesn't mean you can, or at least easily. And that's kind of why we're here today. One of those things that we really ought to measure, one of the most important measures, it's not something that has been very easy to do, at least in past years. So we're here to talk about the fact that it's getting a little bit easier, and of course that measure is first call resolution. But there's this overall dilemma about, how can we get the information we need to better manage our operation? And so that's just the big challenge and what we want to address here today. As we think about what the traditional measures are in call centers, if there was such a thing as a top 10 list, I think this would probably be it, the most common things measured in contact centers today. And I'm sure all of you out there in the audience are familiar with all these measures, and I'm sure most of you have all these in place, or at least most of them. There's all kinds of, statistics that show that, 78% of call centers measure abandon rate. Over 70% call centers look at service level, with another 20-some% using ASA. So these measures are out there and they are in place. There are problems, quite frankly, with many of these measures. As you think about key performance indicators, what are the most relevant ones for looking at every day and looking at with a sense of how am I doing today and what do I need to do better for tomorrow? As we look at some of these measures, like I said, many of them are problematic. I mean, abandon rate as one. That's not one of my favorite measures. Most call centers have it. I don't think it tells you a whole lot. I think it's kind of a little bit of a red flag that something else is wrong someplace else. But it's not one of those things that you frankly have complete control over. So certainly when I think about what I want to measure and work with, I want to at least measure things that I have control over. And abandon rate is one of those that somebody else is deciding whether they're going to abandon or not. You can influence abandon rate, but you really can't control it. The customer is going to decide whether they abandon or not. Service level and ASA, I mean, there's the number one measure, I guess, if there is a most important one, or at least the most commonly measured one. Yeah, that's it. We're all about measuring speed of answer. But we look at that measure and we look at it and evaluate it in many, many different ways. And I would guess that if I ask all of you how service level looked yesterday, most of the call centers out there are going to go to some number that showed what happened all rolled up at the end of the day. And what that number may represent is kind of an average for the entire day yesterday. And some of you may have had a good day yesterday, some of you not such a good day. But for many of you, that number represented an average of kind of the entire day's performance. And it may have been that at some hours of the day yesterday, service was really great, and you were answering all the calls pretty close to immediately. And there were other hours of the day that really stank. It was horrible yesterday. But at the end of the day, those lows, averaged out with the highs, and you came up with some average number that was maybe pretty close to your target. But it's one of those situations where head's in the oven, feet are in the freezer, average body temperature looked okay, but it didn't really say anything about how uncomfortable from a performance standpoint for the staff, for the bottom line, or anything else those two extremes were of overstaffing and understaffing. But we've got this average number at the end of the day that, you know, is a number that we sort of shoot for, and we're either happy about it or thinking we need to work on it. So it's a measure that's in place, and I'm picking on that one because it's just the one that everybody has in some way. And it is the number, quite frankly, that derives so much analysis and activity in terms of workforce management and how many staff do we need and how do we arrange them all and all of that. Yet the way we measure it is not terribly effective at giving us information to do it better. So as we look at that measure or any of these other measures, quite frankly, what are you looking at and what are you measuring, and what are you looking at in terms of efficiency, how efficient you're being, as opposed to effectiveness? How well are you utilizing your resources, and how effective are you at making your goals, at meeting your goals? So this kind of takes us back to, you know, what is the ultimate goal of your contact center? I mean, that really has to go back to your overall mission and vision of the organization. And what are you trying to accomplish? I mean, are you trying to be all about the utmost in customer satisfaction, and you're the leader there? And if so, the contact center operates in a certain way, and therefore, hopefully, if things were done properly, your key performance indicators are ones related to specifically customer satisfaction. Some of the rest of you may be all about sales, and what you're there for is to generate revenue and pull in as much revenue and sales as possible. Contact center will be set up that way. Some of your key performance indicators are going to be more in the area of revenue per call, conversion rate, those kinds of things. How effectively are you making your number one goal? But as you think about those goals, I mean, everybody in the audience today, if we can find one common thread amongst all of you, it's that you know, none of you can exist without customers, right? And so you might say that all of us, you know, call center school, VPI, all of you in the audience today, all of us have one common goal, and that is the acquisition and the maintenance of customers. And so that's a goal, and therefore we want to have a performance measure that's in place. It's like, how are we doing at acquiring and maintaining our customers? So obviously a measure of customer satisfaction would be paramount there. So hopefully you do have measures of customer satisfaction in place, whether it's a customer satisfaction survey, whether it's more indirect of repurchase rates, loyalty, you know, outside surveys, whatever it might be. But the question is, those customer satisfaction scores, you know, what's going to impact those the most? And so when you look at your key performance indicators, you want to have things on the list that are impacting that the most, that are highly correlated with those things. And as you look at this list that many of us in the contact center world live and die by, many of those actually don't have a whole lot of correlation with customer satisfaction, something we all agree that this is really important. As a matter of fact, looking at service level and ASA, you would think, well, there's a high correlation. We measure that because if it's, you know, long delays, customer satisfaction goes down. The shorter the delays, the higher the customer satisfaction, right? Not necessarily. It's really interesting to look at the statistics, and what you see is that there's very little correlation between service level ASA and customer satisfaction. Now, that's not to say that if it were really, really long delays, that wouldn't impact satisfaction and you're going to have some high correlation with customer dissatisfaction. But quite frankly, whether you're answering calls in 20 seconds versus 30 versus 45 doesn't seem to have all that much impact on customer satisfaction. surprising for some people to hear that. They don't seem to care. They don't seem to remember by the time that they're asked about customer satisfaction how long they waited. There's no, oh, well, I remember that. I only waited 18 seconds, and oh, there you're going to get a great mark on satisfaction. There's really not that much linkage about how much that wait time really correlated and had an impact on how much I like your organization, how much I'm willing to do business with you. So that's true, actually, for almost everything on this list. There's very little correlation between these key performance indicators that we're killing ourselves over and customer satisfaction. And many of these things don't have a lot of value to us in getting us towards a better tomorrow. Many of these are just, here's what's happened yesterday, last month, here's what's happened historically, but they don't give us a whole lot of good stuff to work with in terms of, so that leads to, we should do this differently. So what I'm saying here is that I really think sometimes we've got to kind of kickstart and reboot a little bit as it relates to some of our key performance indicators and what we're measuring and what we're just putting so much effort into day in and day out. So if these are not the measures, what then? Well, as we think about the ideal measure for, what is pointing us in the right direction, there is one. And that measure, the ideal measure, is really first call resolution. It is, I would argue, the best indicator, the most highly correlated thing you can measure that goes along with customer satisfaction. And in fact, many, many studies show this over and over and over again. Those getting the highest customer satisfaction scores, very high correlation, those companies with very high first call resolution rate. So it's definitely what callers seem to care most about. Would they like a short delay? Sure. Do they want to be treated in a friendly manner? Sure. But mostly what they care about is just plain old, I want to get my question answered or my issue resolved. So high levels of correlation there. And the good news is it accomplishes many different goals. So if we're resolving calls on that first call, we're doing it quickly, not only does that keep our customers happy, that stakeholder group, but it's going to keep our senior management stakeholder group happy because first call resolution is going to mean we're going to get fewer calls, not as many repeat calls. Fewer calls mean less workload, and guess what? That translates into fewer FTE, less headcount. So lower cost for call, efficiency, productivity. We're getting more out of the staff that we have. They're doing a better job. So it's great from that point of view as well. And as we think about our third call center stakeholder group, all those people you need to keep happy every day, there's the customer, there's senior management, and there's the staff. So it's also great for them in that the higher the first call resolution rate, the less likely that they're going to have to take that second or third call where somebody didn't handle it right on the first one, and those aren't as much fun to handle, and they're going to take longer, and they're going to be more stressful. So it also helps with the just the workload that they're going to receive and the kind of workload it is. So it keeps them happier as well. The quality of our work is better. It's more consistent. There's less rework happening. And obviously that all points towards higher profitability. So we're lowering our costs on the one side, two sides of the coin with profitability. One is affecting the cost side. And if we can do that with fewer calls, that means fewer headcount, our biggest cost in the call center. So costs are lower. And the other side of that profitability coin is, the revenue side. So whether it's direct revenue, if I like you better right now, I'm going to order more, or I like you better. My satisfaction with your organization is higher. I'm more likely to repurchase. I'm more likely to come back. I'm more likely to tell others about you. And so from the revenue side, it goes up. So much higher profitability. So, here's just the answer to everything right here here's our measure. First call resolution, that is the single metric that gives us the most balanced view. And there's all sorts of statistics to kind of support this. So, we pulled in lots of different sort of surveys, benchmarks, whatever, just to show you some statistics. First call resolution, the highest correlated measure to customer satisfaction, according to number one there, the Service Quality Management Group. Customer satisfaction is 35% lower when a second call has to be made. I think we can all relate to that. Certainly drops if we didn't get it taken care of the first time. We have to use our valuable time to, go in a second time. So everyone can relate to that. The same group said that for every 1% gain in first call resolution, that's a 1% gain in customer satisfaction. So you got a clear one-to-one correlation there. Another one, 34% of customers who don't get their inquiry or problem resolved are likely to go to a competitor. Yeah, a third are just going to go out the door. So don't have that loyalty factor. Versus only 3% if first call resolution has happened. Boosting this, getting first call resolution rate higher, dramatically reduces costs. We've seen that from the viewpoint of just fewer calls necessary, therefore not as many FTE. This statistic says 66% of contact center calls today are due to callbacks. That one, I don't know. That seems a little high. I mean, some statistics you kind of have to take with a grain of salt. That one, to me, frankly, seems a little high. But it's in a report, and you can argue that one with the Yankee Group. And then finally, the cost of a complaint call not handled at the point of entry escalates by 500% when it has to be escalated. So someone higher up in the organization, more paperwork, more, whatever. So I think we would agree that the more calls that have to happen, the higher the cost. So yes, if we can improve first call resolution, absolutely, that's the way we want to go. So we're in agreement. It's an important metric. We'd like to get FCR as high as possible, all kinds of benefits. So let's just do it, right? There we go. End of seminar today. But some of you are saying, yeah, we know all that. We know it's a great measure. We'd sure like to have it, but you know what? It's hard. It's hard to get it. We've tried, and it's just not easy. It wasn't on my list of reports that spit out of the ACD or this other, software system that I have. I didn't see first call resolution as one of the reports. Well, it's harder. I mean, it's been traditionally much more difficult to get that number. There are lots of different measurement approaches we can use here. There's lots of different ways to kind of get at this first call resolution number. None of them have been necessarily, easy or perfect or cost effective up to this point. In many cases, some of these measurement approaches make it a little bit hard to pinpoint the reason why it's high or low or whatever. So I think we want to put a poll up right now. Lauren, if you could help me with that. We're going to put a poll up that just shows some of the measurement approaches and how you might be currently measuring first contact resolution, FCR. So is it from a performance management kind of software like CRM, quality monitoring, so you're basically listening to calls, determining was it over or not, a post-contact survey, that could be via IVR, it could be via email, it can be actual telephone calls, but pretty soon after the contact, you're calling and asking the customer, was it done or not? Next one, the agent's asking, either does this resolve everything, or they're making a judgment and keying it into the system of closed or not closed. Or do you not do any of these things? Do you not yet measure first call resolution? So you can vote in that poll and submit your answers. And I think you can, I don't know if you can see the poll and the next slide. I'm going to go on and just talk a little bit about each of these approaches, and then we'll look at the actual poll results. All of these have been used with some degree of success or not. In terms of the performance management software and CRM system, I mean, the pros to that are, number one, it's based on, lots of data is out there, and it's objective, and it's consistent. It's not cheap. These systems are not inexpensive, so there is a cost factor there. And, there's a lot of work, really, a lot of set up to get it going, a lot of definitions in there. Everybody needs training on how to categorize, make it work. And then in some cases, it's still difficult to distinguish between did first call resolution happen or not? Was it a second call that came in because the first one didn't get completed compared to a second call came in, but not because the first one wasn't good. Hey, I'm a repeat customer. I'm buying more stuff from you, or I've got a different reason for a call, or whatever the case may be. So if we can go on to the next slide, you'll see a list of the current measures of first call resolutions where I'm going from here. Call monitoring is another possibility, and this one's easy. It's simple. Many people have a quality monitoring system in place, so it's kind of already out there. But the downside to using this as your first call resolution sort of solution is that, how many calls are you really listening to and figuring out did a resolution happen or not? If agents are handling, 2,000 calls a month and you're listening to 10 of them, not much of a sample. So sample size is small. It tends to be too random a sample to truly be representative. And then there's just lots of missing information. Another approach is let's ask after the call, did we wrap this up for you or not? And that can be done via IVR, via email, making a phone call. The pros there is you're getting it straight from the customer's mouth, did you solve my problem or not? And you're getting the opportunity for open-ended comments about what they thought went wrong, and lots of things there. Problem with that is it's time sensitive. You want to make sure you're getting that survey to them in a time period that they'll remember what happened on the call, not a week later, a month later. Sometimes difficult to follow that up if there was a comment, if there was something that they said, and how many people are going to respond. So is the response rate satisfactory and giving you enough of a representative sample to kind of figure things out? Another way to think about it is doing an agent call query, having the agents ask, or sort of pass judgment. Having them call, of course, is having them do it on a call is a positive because it's right there on the call. It's inexpensive if you don't mind extending the call just a little bit. But then you've got some agent judgment, and there may be something in it for them to say, yes, it was resolved or not. So you've got a little bit of subjectivity there and perhaps some manipulation on their part and some variance in the way that one agent might view it versus another. So that kind of brings us down to the last one, which is more of a desktop analytics route. And here's where there's some possibilities. There's kind of a bright light out there, I think. And here's where we have some new capabilities that can be very cost-effective and give you some accurate information. Basically, a system that's pulling pieces from lots of different places and combining all this with some analytics to really kind of show you what's going on out there. So what we really need is, in this sort of next generation approach, is a way to measure first contact resolution that shows kind of what's happening from beginning to end. And Lauren and Patrick, is there a way to look at those poll results at this point? To come before we leave this slide to sort of say, oh, there we go, ask and I shall receive. Okay. So we're kind of evenly split across the board. So about a third of you using 4 different approaches here. A CRM system, some with quality monitoring, some with the post-call survey. About a third of you not doing anything to measure it. Just a few of you doing the agent judgment piece, but kind of a mixture of those 3. And there's valid information from all of those. But I think what we want to look at is then taking it and looking at it in a way and pulling pieces of information that give us 3 important components. So on the next slide, who is the caller? So we need to know who it is. Have they called us before, or are they a new caller? And lots of ways we can figure that out. So we can go pull that from the IVR system. We can look at automatic number identification. We can, maybe there's a live triage on the front. So lots of different ways to figure that out. We want to know who it is. We also want to know why are they calling. Same kind of possibilities. Pull it from the IVR through a menu. Are you calling about this or this? Maybe a dialed number. So it's a new campaign or a new product they're calling about, and we can tell that from the number they dialed. So are they calling for the same reason? Is it more of the same because it didn't get fixed the first time, or is there a new reason for calling? Another question here is, and sometimes a definition of first call is that, well, they didn't call back within X amount of time. So looking at when did they call last and having some definition of that can't be a repeat call because it was past this window of time. You've got to be really careful about that definition of what that window is. But that can be one way to define what is a repeat call and what's coming in as a brand new issue. But where we're wanting to go with this is figuring out how to go out and grab all that data and have a measurement in place that pulls in all that data and makes it not just random sets of data out there, but actionable information, and that's really the key. So what we want is information that tells us what's going on and gives us enough information to figure out, is it a customer issue? Is the reason that it didn't happen because they didn't send in all the information that we need to solve the problem, and it's really a customer issue? Is it an organizational problem? Are there trends going on about billing statements in general that we need to go fix? Are people having difficulty, or are reps having difficulty handling a certain kind of call? And it's not just one rep having that over and over, which would point to an agent capability. But everybody seems to be having that. Looks like everybody went through training, but all the last training group seems to be dealing with this in an inappropriate way, and it's causing repeat calls. So we've got some problem perhaps in training or something that didn't come through. Or breaking it down into agent capabilities. So is it that someone's new? Is it they're missing a piece of skill or knowledge? Is it a behavioral kind of problem? They're constantly transferring one kind of call and it's not getting resolved. So what we need here is some information to get us to actionable data. I mean, that's what I was talking about earlier. We have some measures in place that tell us what happened yesterday, and they're much more historical in nature. What we need is enough information in our hands to work with to take us to tomorrow, to fix it today and get us to tomorrow, which is a better first call resolution rate, to be able to garnish all those benefits that we talked earlier. So the key here is if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So let's talk about what's the newest, latest, and greatest, and what are some of the capabilities that can help us better measure it and then analyze it and figure things out. So Patrick, I think you're going to take us through some new possibilities and some new solutions here.
Thank you very much, Penny. That's fantastic. Welcome, everyone, and looking forward to introducing some new technology. But before I do that, I wanted to share the framework that we use here at BPI to effectively allow our customers to utilize that technology, because the technology is just the enabler, but the actual process around not only the implementation of that technology, but the continuous use and continuous improvement of processes within your organization is very important. You may be familiar with this. This is stems from Lean Six Sigma, where you go through the process of defining the problem, measuring, analyzing, improving, and controlling. And in our solution, the analytics fits in nicely into each of these phases, and I'll kind of walk you through that. In the define phase, the issue we're trying to solve here is first contact resolution. So it's important that we make sure that we have everyone on board from all the way throughout the organization, that from an agent level all the way up to executive management, senior management, that everyone's on board with trying to improve FCR, because it does involve virtually everyone within not only the contact center, but even outside of the contact center often, in terms of actually taking the steps necessary to improve first call resolution or first contact resolution. You want to define the key players that are going to be assigned to the project and sponsors, and then kick off the project. So in the measure phase, this is where we're looking to gather information on the current situation. So this is what Penny was referring to as being challenging, right? We saw everyone's measuring first contact resolution in a variety of different ways. And there's challenges with all the current ways associated with measuring FCR. I'm going to introduce you to a new tool to help you effectively measure FCR. But before I do that, let's look again at what are the key things we need to know to effectively measure FCR. Who is the customer? This is typically either captured by the IVR ACD or in a CRM system, either already pre-populated or entered by the agent. Why are they contacting you, right? So these are your reasons, the categories, if you will, that of why people are calling in or emailing in or web chat, why they're contacting us again. So this could be they're captured in the IVR up front, press 1 for this, 2 for that. Incoming phone number, we may be able to determine the reason for that if there's a certain type of campaign or a certain number that they call for certain reasons. Case ID or service ticket in a help desk environment. This is very common in that environment. And what's nice about that is often the case ID is directly related to a customer as well. So you can often determine who is the customer and why are they contacting you all in just one number there, one ID. Reason codes entered by the agent into the CRM system. Very common way to track reasons for the call. Some of you may not be comfortable with the reasons that your agents are selecting. Maybe they're selecting general inquiry a lot of times. A great way to make those reason codes more accurate is to actually QA against reason code. Put a question in your QA form. Was the reason code select, or the multiple reasons, were they correct that someone called? Another one is identifying the application screens entered by your agent. So following the agent using analytics, desktop analytics, to follow the agent through their applications as they're navigating to determine, okay, did they go into a billing screen? Did they go into an address change screen? Did they update an order? What were the reasons for that call? And it could have been multiple reasons. By following them through their screens and tagging information along the way to the interaction of the reasons for that call based on the screens they enter. And then when did they last contact you for the same reason? So Penny mentioned typically a time period that, depending on the type of call, the complexity of the call, the industry, this varies dramatically. I've seen it, 3 days to 7 days, very common for a lot of call types, 30 days. But this varies tremendously of how you want to measure FCR and what time period you're looking to say, if another contact doesn't come in this time period, then we're going to consider that a solved issue. So desktop analytics is kind of one of the most revolutionary technologies that's hit the contact center market in over a decade. And the reason, like Penny said, is it's very cost-effective, very accurate, and then actionable. And we'll get to the importance of it being actionable in a little bit. But a lot of analytics can analyze data, and it's typically done by few people in an ivory tower. They're analyzing data, but that data doesn't make it to the call center floor. It's very difficult to get that data and know what types of actions to take and make it operational for agents, supervisors, managers. Desktop analytics allows you to not only gather information quickly, but also tell you what to do based on rules, what you should improve. Basically, just to show you a concept of what desktop analytics does, this is a sample order entry screen. It could be a help desk ticketing system. It could be a claim system. It could be any type of application, web-based or thick client application. But basically what you're going to do is capture information throughout the interaction that the agent is having with the customer. So when they click start the order or they click the general tab, you may have 12 different ways you start an order or 12 ways you open a case. You can map each of those ways to the actual call. So if you look down here, we know exactly when that order was started in that call. We can jump right to that. At this point in the call, there's already information on the application screens that we're interested in capturing. For example, order ID. So we may want order ID and then customer ID. Remember, one of the key things we need for FCR is customer ID or account ID. We need to know who that customer is. So this is very common to capture that information as well. Then the agent's going to go and either solve the issue or gather additional information about an order or whatever it may be. And at that time, they're going to click OK to either finish that case or complete the order. At that time, there's additional information that you may want to capture. For example, here we want the order type as well, so we can capture that it was an upgrade. We could capture the product name here as well. The value of the order we can capture. You can capture as much of the information here as you'd like to, and that helps you further define the reasons for the call and helps you pinpoint the calls that matter most. So now we get to the analyze phase. So this is where we want to essentially go through and identify the root causes, right? And what do you focus on? What is the most important thing to focus on when you're starting out on an FCR project and you really want to get to what's important? Pareto's rule, you may be familiar with the 80-20 rule. It applies to a lot of different things in the world today. For example, 20% of your products often account for 80% of sales volume. Also, 20% of your customers account for 80% of profits. 20% of your equipment, 80% of breakdowns, and you can go through it, right? 20% of the clothes in your closet is probably 80% of what you wear. And this also applies for first contact resolution. 20% of reasons for contacting you often accounts for the majority of the repeat interactions that come into your contact center. So with analytics, you are delivered a wide variety of reports and widgets, and you can analyze your data because you're capturing all this information from the application screens using desktop analytics. And now you're presented with things like Pareto charts and pie charts, and you can view the data all different ways. And everyone, with our application, everyone gets a customizable dashboard that they can add as many different types of FCR or handle time or sales widgets or dash lists that you'd like to. This is examples of a Pareto one for FCR. And as you can see here, that the 80-20 rule does apply here. So 80% of the repeat calls are actually 20% of the types of calls. So billing inquiries here is the one we want to focus on. You may have 20, 30 different types of calls or reason codes, and you can display all that. You can display it by department, by team, by agent, and then drill down and figure out, get to the actual call that made up this information, so you can figure out why the repeat calls. You may have a widget here that shows show me the number of calls where they called in 5 times within the last week for the same issue, right? That may be important to you, or maybe even 3 times, and you want to find out really what's going on and drill down. So it's very powerful once you have all the information collected. And Penny mentioned collecting information from a variety of systems. and then pulling all that together so you can report and analyze on it. And then these widgets will update in near real time, so you always have the latest view of what's going on that week or that month or that day. So essentially at that point what happens is the solution or the software takes all that data, the desktop data, the events that we're capturing from the application screen. It's going to take call metadata. It's going to take data from the ACD and the dialer, so we have connectors to all the various systems out there. Then it's also going to mirror up the call audio if you're recording your calls, the screen video if you're recording screen, and then web chat and email. It's going to pull all that together and essentially bucket the categories of calls that you're interested in listening to. So you want to listen to all the billing inquiries we looked at earlier. That was the main issue. So you're going to have a bucket of all the billing inquiries, and then from that point you can either go through and evaluate, listen to all those calls and watch the videos and figure out what's going on with those, or you can automatically send a random sample to your QA team. So instead of randomly listening to a small percentage, 3 to 5 calls per agent per month or 10 calls per agent per month for new hires, now you can get more intelligent in your QA, and you can actually deliver a sample, an accurate sample size of billing inquiries to your QA team to figure out what's happening, what the reasons for the billing inquiries or the billing questions constantly coming in and causing repeat calls are. The same with any other type of reason for repeat interactions. So what's going to happen is essentially if you deliver a sample of the repeat calls for billing issues, what's going to happen is the QA evaluator is going to get a to-do list, or the supervisor, and it's going to tell them exactly what calls they need to evaluate and why they need to evaluate them. This was tagged because it was a repeat interaction for a billing inquiry, or this was a canceled account. It could be a call with multiple transfers. Any reason, any bucket that you've created, you can automatically send and populate their to-do list. And then they're going to get a targeted evaluation form. So instead of using one generic evaluation form for all types of calls or all types of repeat calls, you can now have targeted QA forms that allow you to ask questions relevant to that type of call. So if it's a product issue, it may have different questions than if it was a billing inquiry or a different reason or a different type of call. It's going to be delivered with the video, so you can see, is it an issue we're having with the knowledge base? Perhaps agents aren't able to find the information they're looking to find in an accurate manner. Perhaps they have too many different applications on their desktop, and maybe those processes could be optimized or maybe even consolidated into just a few applications that they really need. So very powerful here, and this essentially takes away the hunting and pecking and delivers a targeted form that allows you to ask the questions that you're really interested in asking. And in the meantime, you're still evaluating the agent as well, so they're still going to get a QA score. So essentially, when you listen to the actual evaluation, whether it's someone on an SDR project team or a QA analyst or supervisor, they're going to see all of the interactions in all of the repeat contacts. So, for example, here, this case ID 149-3295, you can see that this person called in, the cable was out, and they had an issue, and they called in 3 times before that issue actually got solved. So you can actually figure out what the reason, what was the core reason, why did they actually call, and then you'll get the screen recording as well, so you can see if there's any issues there, and that's just a toggle between the screen and the audio playback. But you can put the screen on a second monitor, which is what a lot of our customers do as well. So then you get to the improve phase, and this is where I've seen a lot of SDR programs actually fall down, is that they're not making that information actionable. So what, even if they're doing it now through call quality monitoring, post-contact surveying, or a calculation from the CRM system, is that they're not making that information readily available and actionable to the people that can actually make a change or do something with that. So a key, this is a pretty compelling statistic here, is that 60% of all repeat calls are training or process driven. This means that, some of the other 40% might be things outside of the contact center that are a little more difficult to influence. Maybe it's the shipping method that we're using, or maybe it's something to do with marketing. But we can still influence those, but within the contact center alone, has at least 60% of the issues that we can solve. So we can start working on today if we want. So repeat calls, related to training. So figuring out exactly where the training gaps are, evaluating those calls and scoring them, and finding out where the gaps are, right? Not just listening to a few calls and saying, all right, we have gaps here, but if you evaluate calls and you include SDR in your QA process, then you're going to get some real meaningful, statistically valid data on where you need to focus your efforts, your training efforts, or your process, what processes need to be fixed first, because you have enough data, because you're actually evaluating those calls. So training-related issues, these are some of the most common ones: long hold times, agent provides unclear or incorrect information. These are, this is what's going to cause people to call in again often. So you may find this as you start to listen to those repeat interactions, especially the ones that come in 3, 4, 5, 6 times. They take that long to solve. Figure out what the real issues are. Agents are unaware of recent events, and this is common, especially if you're tied in any way to things that the marketing team might be doing, maybe campaigns that are happening, or product recalls, or anything of that nature. It's important that agents are updated with that information right away. So process-related issues, company policies, absence of information, the lack of authority to solve problems is something that often we don't empower our agents to really do the things they need to do, to give credit, to solve the customer's issue within reason. And you'll find if you actually empower your agents that they're not going to go away given the bank. They actually, they hold those credits dearly, and they don't want to give them out to everyone, but they feel empowered when they can, and they'll actually, cause fewer callbacks if they can do that and solve issues, because they have the authority to do so. And then poor response times. This could be either email response times, or even, if you're delivering a product or service and they're expecting it and they're not getting it, that's going to cause repeat calls. So along with analytics, analytic solutions typically come with integrated coaching, or at least VPIs does, and where you can, based on the training gaps and the gaps that are identified through the QA process, can automatically schedule coaching. So when you're creating the QA form, you actually decide what type of coaching would fit best with this question on the QA form. And then if they fall below that score on the QA form, they're going to automatically get the coaching that is best suited for that skill gap. And here's an example of just an e-learning course that gets sent up. Self-paced e-learning is very valuable and becoming more and more popular. So A lot of our customers are kind of taking their content, their classroom training, and converting a lot of it into e-learning. Not all of it. A good mix works well, but there's a lot of refresher courses, refresher training, new products, new services, things like that work really well over in an e-learning format, because you can make them, using just an authoring tool like Adobe Captivate, Articulate, really easy to create these e-learning modules with video. You can get a flip video camera and actually video the new product or what it may be, and then follow up with questions. And the beauty of it is it does integrate with your workforce management system. So during a coaching job within workforce management, the agents actually are able to take e-learning. Let's say it's a 15-minute coaching job, the queues are low, workforce management says, all right, let's allow these 10 agents to take e-learning. They take their e-learning, go through the material and take the quiz and the questions afterwards. If they don't finish the e-learning course, it remembers where they are, and then during their next training opportunity, when they're allowed to take training again, it'll resume them where they were at that current time in that question. And the beauty of e-learning is you're able to track not only their score, and not only how long it took them to take the quiz or the e-learning assignment, but also within each question, how long did it take, and did they get that question wrong or right. So you can see very easily where the gaps are related to repeat calls and first contact resolution. Also, in addition to training, this is where I see a lot of the issues have to do with the knowledge base. Use this as an opportunity to improve the knowledge base and consolidate your desktop applications if possible to make it easier for the agent to navigate it. So during the control phase, this is where you want to set up not only the reports, but alerts and notifications, scorecards, so you can include FCR rate in agent desktop tickers and scorecards as well. So every manager, every agent can have a ticker and a scorecard. These are completely customizable, so you can put whatever metrics you're interested in capturing into those scorecards and tickers. And then you get to see how well they're doing versus either their goal or versus their group. It comes very powerful. You're making it actionable. They know exactly where they stand at all times, and it gives you transparent insight into what's going on. And then the ability to basically on any of those metrics in the scorecards or the desktop tickers, you can send alerts or thresholds. So at a group level, you may want to send an alert or notification to manager when FCR rate is above a certain threshold for a certain type of call. Or at the agent level, maybe it's the 5th repeat call within a week. This customer called in 5 times. At that point, you want to send that interaction, that complete interaction of all those 5 calls to the customer save team, have them listen to it, and perhaps get involved if they need to. So, if you have any questions, we would look forward to answering them. I know there's a lot of questions that came through here. Unfortunately, we are running low on time. We've reached the 1 hour mark. Penny, are you still available? I think Penny actually had to get onto another training webinar, but we will be sending you each a copy of the slides, and we also have recorded the webinar, so we'll send you a link to the recording. We greatly appreciate your time today, and for those of you that have questions, we will answer them individually. One common question I can see that seems to be coming through with what are appropriate FCR rates and for different industries. I see financial services, healthcare. Typically, benchmarking FCR is very difficult because there's so many different types of calls, call complexities. Wouldn't recommend necessarily benchmarking FCR, also because of the so many ways people measure FCR today too. If you're measuring it through post-call survey which is an external method of measuring it, right? The customer takes the survey at the end of the call. That customer may call in an hour later, but and they said at the time that their issue was resolved, or they get their bill in the mail and they call back again, it really wasn't resolved. That's an external measure. And then you have the QA, which is an internal measure. And if you're benchmarking against people who measure differently, I just want to be careful there. A good thing to do is, basically start measuring it accurately within your organization. Consider analytics, because you're going to get a lot more accurate measurements, really nice reporting, and then you can kind of see where the gaps are. One thing that we've noticed in recent research is that measuring it is key. 90% of organizations that just measure it, so if you're not even measuring it today, try to measure it in some way you can, but 90% of organizations that measure it do see performance improvements within 6 months. So measuring it alone, what it does is create awareness within the organization, and you start getting agents and teams and departments actually going towards that measure and really trying to improve processes and improve training and things. So start by measuring it, and then we'd love the opportunity to show you a more detailed demonstration to you and your team of our analytic solutions and our e-learning and our QA solutions if you're interested. So thank you so much for your time today, and have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.